Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mint and to episode 5 of Sydney Living Museum's Rooms in the House Sydney Open Talk series. My name's Ian Innes and I'm the Assistant Director for Heritage with Sydney Living Museums, and shortly it will be my pleasant duty to introduce tonight's speakers to you. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose land we meet today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. Our Rooms in the House series is the third Sydney Open Talk series that Sydney Living Museums has presented, and it brings together architects, historians and social commentators to explore how the design, the use and the relationship of different rooms in our houses have changed over time and what these changes maybe say about us. Tonight we're going to learn about bedrooms, and I've been joking with the speakers about whether it's a hot topic or not, but they don't like the joke. In these talks, Bedrooms, revealing our most private space, two speakers, our curator Joanna Nicholas and architect Koichi Takada, reflect on how the design and the use of the bedroom, arguably the most private room in the house, has changed over time. So our first speaker tonight is Joanna Nicholas. Joanna is the curator for Sydney Living Museum properties Elizabeth Bay House, Government House, the Rose Seidler House and Vaucluse House. She studied fine arts and museum studies at the University of Sydney and has worked as a curator for the National Trust of Australia and has also been in Sydney Living Museums for over 12 years in various roles. Whilst passionate about the conservation of our properties, she's also committed to the idea of revealing their histories and identifying new stories about their past inhabitants and their collections to share with new audiences and of all ages. Joanna's previously curated an exhibition called And So to Bed, which was about the history of beds and bedding in Australia, which was held at Elizabeth Bay House back in 2002. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Joanna Nicholas.
Thank you, Ian. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out in such hot weather. I'm not sure that my talk will be hot or saucy, so my apologies for that in advance. The bedroom. The bedroom is certainly a more semi-public and some might argue a more multi-purpose space than it was in the 19th and the first part of the 20th centuries in Australia. I grew up in country New South Wales in a room that had been decorated by my mum. Recycled chests of drawers, a wardrobe painted canary yellow and with canary yellow enamel paint, the odd family heirloom, a bed cover made of scraps of Marimekko fabric, and my favourite toy, what is now a very mangy pink puppy. I'm currently sharing my bedroom with my partner and my 3-year-old son, squished into a tiny apartment as we renovate our not quite so dream home. In interviewing architects for our modest reno, we opted for somebody who understood our mantra. We didn't want built-ins, we didn't want an ensuite, and we discovered in the end we were obviously more idiosyncratic than we thought. Either that or freaks. All we wanted is somewhere to sleep comfortably and with good ventilation. My first slide is of a Sydney-sider, John Butler, who grew up on a farm in Coonamble. He found the vestiges of this 4-post bedstead on a rubbish tip in Western Sydney 30 years ago. He's a naive artist who spent 3 months painting his bedroom ceiling in gloss enamel house paint. In images from his childhood, travels to the Kimberley and other beloved pets and animals. My scope this evening is to not discuss bedrooms and their furnishings of today, but those of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th century. I'll be a little cheeky and push to the late 1940s to end up in Ku-ring-gai Chase at Rose Seidler House, built by the late Harry Seidler for his parents Max and Rose. The bed has an ancient history of significance. In Europe, it was long the central item of furniture. For centuries, the most valuable item in the household assemblage, even in relatively poor households. Bed furniture, or bed hangings, were functional not only for privacy and warmth, but were the major vehicles of display, of honour, of claim to status for the bed inhabitants. State rooms were designed to flaunt the wealth and status of the owner. The poet Thomas Hood, writing in the first half of the 19th century, wrote, O bed, delicious bed, that heaven upon earth to the weary head." That's as saucy as mine might get, Ian, I think. Rest for the weary strikes a powerful chord with us today, but the bed is not merely functional for rest. A larger symbolism grows from the function of the bed as the site of birth, conception and death, a frame for the whole life cycle, if you like, and in this sense, a symbol of family continuity and regeneration. Rooms were driven by status and hierarchy within the family. After the first half of the 19th century, bedrooms in Australia were furnished more modestly than the public rooms. This is Elizabeth Farm, one of Sydney Living Museum's properties out at Rose Hill near Parramatta. The history of Australian domestic interiors and their furnishings reflects the ways Australians have both derived inspiration from overseas styles and attempted to adapt them to local social conditions and climate. Bedrooms and their changing styles of beds and bedding reveal unique insights into changing tastes and fashions, class, personality, creativity and ingenuity, comfort and privacy, love, lust, even approaches and attitudes to pests, health and sanitation. Through the 1800s, mass production and increasing prosperity among the growing middle classes fuelled an upsurge in consumer demand. Household furnishings became increasingly elaborate. And this is a really wonderful trade catalogue, Ertzman and Company Guide to Home House Furnishings from the Caroline Simpson Library and Research Collection here at the Mint. And I will say now that unless specified on my slides, all of the images that I've drawn upon tonight are from that collection. In Australia, well-to-do colonists furnished their beds and bedrooms according to the latest European and especially English trends, with the help of a range of domestic manuals, pattern books and catalogues, and by the eager purchase of imported goods. They also adapted imported styles with growing confidence to their new conditions and environment. This is another important domestic manual, a workwoman's guide, published by an anonymous lady in 1838. This isn't what it says. It's the most impractical book I've set eyes on, but it's another manual for decorative upholstery published in 1890, which gave you the ins and outs of how to hem a half-tester, where the rats won't hide in your mattresses, etc. Many people, mostly women, continued to make their own bed furnishings, sometimes from necessity, carefully piecing and patching to extend an item's life or to create new covers and quilts from fabric scraps and remnants, and sometimes as pure expressions of the maker's skill and love. Stimulated by the aesthetic movement introduced to Australia with the Sydney and Melbourne international exhibitions, the fashion for handmade soft furnishings increased through the closing decades of the 19th century. From the 1920s, an ever-expanding range of magazines and periodicals, such as the Australian Home Beautiful and the Home magazine, influenced the way Australians furnished their bedrooms, promoting the latest styles for the modern home and publishing instructions. This is an advertisement for Grace Brothers from the Home magazine of September 1929. Sydney Living Museums actually hold, it's a bit scary really, a bed bolster and fitted bed cover in the collection here in a orange acrylic and yellow, but it's about history, good taste, not good taste, as I remind Ian so often. And this is from Home Beautiful in February 1956, Bedrooms for Your Teenagers. John Claudius Loudon, in his Encyclopedia of Cottage, Farm and Villa Architecture and Furniture, which was published in London in 1833, wrote that four-post bedsteads are more suitable for villas than for cottages, except perhaps for the ones made of wrought iron. They are objectionable on account of the room they take up and the quantity of bed furniture which they require. This is a photograph from circa 1900 of Horsley out in Western Sydney. The house was built in the late 1830s by Captain George Weston, but it actually depicts probably an 1870s set of bed furniture or bed hangings. Sydney Living Museums holds a similar components of a similar tester in its collection at Rouse Hill Estate. From the early 1800s, Australia's middle and upper classes aspired to the timber four-post bedstead with its full and elaborate complement of hangings. As I've mentioned, these were known as bed furniture. They included a headcloth, inner and outer valance, canopy, bed curtain and lower valance. Together they provided privacy and warmth for the occupant. Beds could be hung with cotton, wool, chintz, damask, turkey twill, and were lined with muslin or glazed calico, which actually could be wiped down to free the hangings of dust. For a sale of Captain John Piper's goods in Sydney in June 1827, the Australian newspaper advertised two bedsteads, one of them hung with a rich description of chintz and the other with a wool marine. Unlike Captain Piper, the Archer family of Woolmers in Tasmania, a wonderful 1840s property, and if you haven't visited, I would encourage you to do so next time you're near Longford, dressed their very fashionable French oak bedsteads imported from Gillow and Company in England with simple hangings of white dimity. While appropriate for the warmer Australian climate, their approach echoed Loudon's view that cotton dimity was in good taste and more easily cleaned. Wool merino, on the other hand, was apt to harden moths and rats. Loudon's rational but fashionable views especially suited iron and brass four-post bedsteads, of which this is an example. This is an engraving from the Illustrated Sydney News depicting Archbishop Paulding's bedroom. And you can see that I suspect that is not mosquito netting, but a very light white dimity or muslin. The influential Workwoman's Guide, which I've referred to earlier, noted that so few ladies or servants understood how to put up or take down bedsteads that she included a full detailed instruction of the process. The guide recommended once or twice a year the bed furniture should be taken down and well dusted, rubbed with crusts of bread, if you don't mind, and sometimes calendared to keep it in order. Rehanging the bed, even with help, could take many hours, and I can testify to that. This is the principal bedroom at Elizabeth Bay House, one of our properties, and a small detail from Loudon's encyclopedia to your right. The upper floor of Elizabeth Bay contained 6 bedrooms, 4 of which had adjacent dressing rooms. The rooms facing the harbour were more desirable, and one of these has been furnished as the principal bedroom. We don't have an inventory of the contents of this room, as for when Macleay left, his son William Sharp Macleay allowed his mother and sister to take away their own property, and so there wasn't a listing of the contents of these rooms. Our furnishing of these rooms, therefore, is conjectural, informed by an overview of bedrooms of the period. This rather grandiose, and one might argue too grandiose, mahogany four-post bed of 1830 is hung in red wool with red wool damask and with a brown glazed chintz lining. It has an arrangement of 3 mattresses of straw, horsehair and feathers, the height of which necessitates the use of bed steps. Perhaps from the sublime to the ridiculous, I'd like to quote from the oft-quoted Mrs. Beeton. In her book of household management, she proclaimed, "Some like beds sloping from the top towards the feet, swelling slightly in the middle, others perfectly flat. A good housemaid will accommodate the sleeper, taking care to shake, beat and turn it well in the process." That's the bed, not the sleeper, I imagine. These are a selection of bedding advertisements from later in the 19th and tipping into the 20th century. You would have a straw mattress or palliasse, a wool or hair mattress, a feather bed, a bolster, 2 or 3 pillows, a quilt or counterpane, blankets, sheets, pillowcases. All of these elements help make up your bedding. By the end of the 1800s, the quantity of bedding used had significantly diminished, and the fine chain and wire-woven mattress with a kapok coir or wool overlay became the preferred alternative. I don't know whether if anyone's in the real estate market, and I'm not on commission, but Bishop's Court, formerly known as Green Oaks, I drove to Vaucluse House this morning and noted that it was on the market just up from St Mark's Darling Point. This is actually a photograph from a private collection showing Green Oaks in about the 1870s. Thomas Sutcliffe, this is Thomas Sutcliffe Mort's bedroom. Inset here, you can actually see details of a set of bed curtains acquired by Sydney Living Museums in 2000. So you can actually see this 1850s glazed chintz is part of a bed curtain, one of, I think, 5 or 6 that we have in this collection. And you can actually see the valance here. So it's a really wonderful connection between a piece of material culture that survived in this shocking climate, and after a day like today you can understand why organic material doesn't survive in Australia. And in actual fact, this set of bed curtains, half of them, they came to the organisation through the Mort family, and 2 of the curtains had stayed in Australia, and 4 of them, I think that's right, 4 or 5 had gone back to England, and the ones that had stayed in Australia are in really appalling condition, and the ones that had gone home to England are in good condition. So the effects of light and humidity do terrible things to organic material, and so these the curtains that we have in this collection are a really important survivor. Mort may have purchased an amount of this material to furnish the private rooms at Green Oaks while he was altering the house through the 1850s and 60s. He had ordered 7 brass and 6 iron bedsteads whilst in England, but we suspect from this image and the rather grand 4-post bedstead that this was probably his bedroom. Another subject close to my weird heart are those of watch pockets. This is actually the principal bedroom at Vaucluse House. Watch pockets hung from a headcloth of a 4-post bedstead and originally served in place of bedside tables. Bedside tables were uncommon in the early 1800s. The pockets were made in the same material often as the bed hangings, but could be made of dimity, silk or other fabric. Later examples, often made from velvet, were really heavily embellished, as these ones are, and I suspect were more decorative than useful. This image is from the late 1860s of Government House in Perth, and I suspect that it's not a go. I actually think that's a triple watch pocket hanging on the head curtain of that particular bed. So it's quite those sorts of discoveries make people like me quite excited. The dressing room was separate but allied to the bedroom and was often the man's room. Sometimes in upper-class families it was de rigueur for the adult couple to sleep apart, although less so for the middle class. A dressing room typically contained a man's washstand, dressing table and wardrobe, corresponding to those of his wife, which were located in the bedroom itself. A clothes rack, and usually a single bed for times that the couple did not sleep together. The dressing room, so the principal bedroom of the big red bed I showed you there is just there, and the little dressing room here. We've presently got a really important campaign bed in this room, acquired with the assistance of the members of the organisation a number of years ago. As we were talking about the bedroom, I don't really have sufficient time to address the subject of campaign furniture, but suffice to say that this is a really rare example, constructed from mahogany and dates to sort of 1790 to 1805, something like that. And certainly, if not the original, the straw-stuffed palliasses or mattresses are certainly early. So they've got really wonderful, quite fine tape, probably 1870s, something like that, with the original stuffing still in them. Press bedsteads were often used by servants in houses where there was a shortage of beds. According to Loudon, they were common in kitchens and sometimes parlours. The downside was that they attracted rats. So you can see here, this is actually the object folded out, the bed, press bedstead that could be used as, there's the loo, there are the drawers, and there's the bed. Incredibly uncomfortable, I would imagine. W.H. Rock, or W.H. Roke & Co., exhibited at the Melbourne International Exhibition in the early 1880 to 1801. They were a leading furniture warehouse and exhibited furniture in huon pine, draped in silver and turquoise sateen cloth with fringes of pale blue and pink. And this is an example of one of the exhibition rooms. The bedroom was important for the lady of the house if she didn't have a boudoir to retreat to. I won't dwell on boudoirs tonight because Megan Martin, one of my friends and colleagues, is going to cover that when she talks about those other rooms, smoking rooms, billiard rooms, etc., in the last of this series. And like Ian, I'd really encourage you to attend that. I think it'll be really interesting. The Victorian lady would spend a great deal of time in the bedroom, writing, reading, so sometimes bookcases and writing tables were listed in inventories. It was furnished accordingly: a wardrobe, a dressing table, a chest of drawers and a washstand, complemented with an easy chair or two, and certainly a couch or chaise. Roke, in promoting their furniture, championed the dressing table. It may be constructed in different ways. There were too many options really for mine. 2 wings, each with a marble top and full of drawers, possibly a glass or a swing glass, or a fitted candelabra, or a boot or slipper rack, and for a gentleman, a small black enamelled swing shaving glass mounted on a separate pedestal stand. Pause. Really elaborate interiors. And this is an example of that. Children often shared beds, and certainly bedrooms. Visitors to Vaucluse House comment on the paucity of bedrooms. Timmy, Willie, Fanny, Darcy, Judy, Didie, Belle, Laura, Edith, and finally poor old Fitz Wentworth had to share 3 rooms between them. While the intention was to build more, it never happened, and poor Fitz remained in his room in the hall with his only privacy, a wardrobe acting as a screen. And so this is the children's room as it is presented at the moment at Vaucluse. This is Miss Wentworth's room, and here's poor Fitz's room. And so if you imagine here, it's very narrow space and quite difficult to photograph, but there's a cedar partition that actually blocks his way. So it sits above where the entrance to the house, had it been finished, would have sat. This is actually an early plan from 1848 for Alfred and Sarah Stone from Perth. And you can actually see here where the girls are sharing a bed here, while their 12-year-old brother William was here. And you'd maybe have to trust me, but it says their piano and the strings are broken. So it's these sorts of documents that help organisations like ours understand room arrangements, the type of furniture, the amount of furniture, where it sat within a room. So this is quite a nice survivor from a Western Australian library. Camp or tent beds have ribs or bars across the roof of the bed to keep the curved top firm, but in other respects they don't really vary very much from a 4-post. This really wonderful image of Mr. Neuflard's bedroom was painted by S.T. Gill in 1857. It's one of 6 or 7 images of the same house, watercolours painted at the same time. The house was in Kent Street and served as his home, office and store. And you can see muslin slung over the ribs of the tent bed. I suspect this might be summer because there are jars in the chimney breast, suggesting, so you might, the other thing that you might have seen in the summer is paper fans all folded up for decorative purposes, or piles of pine cones and pomanders for Christmas. So you would dress your house seasonally. I suspect this is summer. And you can see a washstand, a hot water can, and a jug and basin. This is Kennethina's room at Elizabeth Bay House, again another tent bed. This is a Tasmanian bed made of cedar and hardwood, dating about to 1830, and it's been hung with dimity, which is a washable white cotton fabric with a self-woven stripe. We have some original 19th century dimity in the collection at Rouse Hill, and a little bit here in the Caroline Simpson Library and Research Collection. So it's a continuing challenge for us as we try and source documentary fabrics to interpret as accurately as possible these houses to our visitors. Miss Macleay was recalled by her niece, Annabella Boswell, as dear, kind Aunt Kenny. I remember her sitting on the floor in her room and watching with the liveliest interest while her hair was being dressed in the fashion of the day at the back, a high-backed tortoiseshell comb and in front curls. Her hair was very red. She was not pretty, but I admired her very much. Mosquitoes. At night, after the curtains are lowered, a grand hunt takes place to kill or drive out the mosquitoes from within, or moths, I can see here. Having effected which somewhat wearisome task, you tuck the net in all around, leaving one small bit which you carefully raise, and nimbly pop through the aperture into bed, closing the curtain after you. Or so wrote Louisa Ann Meredith in 1844. Her description of the evening ritual of driving out mosquitoes before retiring to a thin skeletal bed illustrates the appropriateness of a lightly hung 4-post bedstead as the preferred sleeping arrangements for an English colonist forced to adjust to life in the Antipodes. Whilst to date, no Australian mosquito nets have survived from the 1800s, with the exception of a really small little fragment held by a private collector in Victoria, which we're continuously kind to, in the hope that one day it may come into the collection. So whilst no 19th century nets survive, and why would they on a day like this in this climate, as I've previously discussed, there are many references to them. In 1839, Eleanor Stephen, writing to her friend Minnie Bedford, described her bedroom as very nice, carpeted almost all over, a nice bed with white furniture and a green mosquito net. Green gauze mosquito nets were often used to complement white dimity hangings. By the turn of the 20th century, mosquito nets were available commercially through Lassiter's and Company, Anthony Hordens, later David Jones. They were made with round, square or rectangular tops And from the mid-1920s, and something probably more familiar to us now, a light circular frame of cane or bamboo was available to tie inside them. This is an advertisement, rather elaborate advertisement from Ertzmann and Company of a 4-post mosquito net. This is Marugal, one of Sydney Living Museum's properties down at, our only property down at Nowra, and this is a view of the big balcony bedroom. In the early years of Marugal's occupation, the bedrooms upstairs were used frequently. As the Thorburn sisters got older, 2 of them slept in the back wing rather than upstairs, as they found the stairs a trial. The big balcony bedroom, always considered the best one, is in many ways the room that was least altered when it was acquired by our organisation in the 1980s, and it still retains its makeshift mosquito net slung over a broom handle. So it's really just yards and yards of mosquito net. I'm not really quite sure if you had to put it over yourself how that would work. This is at Government House, another one of our properties, a photograph from the 1930s, the bedroom of Sir Philip and Lady Game. He was the Governor of New South Wales between 1930 and 35, and their daughter Rosemary Harmer was 11 when her family sailed out from England. She recalls her parents' bedroom and notes that the mosquito net was drawn at night to cover the entire bed. It's quite... remnants of this bedroom suite are still in the house and have been recycled in different parts of the house over that time, as is the tradition with viceregal residences. The timber half-tester, sometimes referred to as the Arabian bed, began to replace the 4-post bedstead in Britain and Australia from the mid-1800s. Writers of domestic manuals disagreed about whether the use of bed hangings was detrimental to your health. So the half-tester bed, resplendent but with far less drapery than the 4-post, was a suitable compromise. This is a rather upmarket bed from Langridge House in Victoria from the 1890s, and perhaps from the sublime to the, well, not ridiculous, this is more my favourite. This is the old nursery at Clifton in Kirribilli, a photograph from the collection here from the 1880s. So you can see a similar little bobble trim, looks like quite a lightweight cretonne possibly, or a light twill on a little metal half-tester bed. It's a lovely, lovely image. David Jones and Company, in what we understand to be its first catalogue, called The Art Furnished Upholsterers and Decorators from about 1895, illustrates a number of examples of festooned half-tester bed hangings that reflect the influence of the aesthetic movement on Australian bed furnishings. Ideas of taste and fashion were not the only factors that influenced the design, manufacture, purchase and furnishing of a bed. Pests, health and sanitation were important considerations. Loudon, we have already learned, advised that the timber 4-post bedstead was apt to harbour vermin, and advocated the use of wrought iron beds in humble dwellings. This is not a humble dwelling, I should hesitate to say. This is Camelot at Narellan out near Camden. In the 1870s, a leading retailer claimed the fact that we live in a warm climate cuts you off from many of the luxuries attachable to the gorgeously carved and decorated 4-poster. You need to consider your health and encouraging insect life, because it is to be laid down as a rule that your bedstead must be of iron or brass or both. This photograph is actually from the collection of the National Trust, taken in the 1970s before the collection at Camelot was dispersed. So it was a series of photographs, I think taken by Jim Whitelock in 1971 or 1972. The French bed. A popular alternative to the 4-post was the French bed. It had 4 low corner posts and was distinguished by having separate bed hangings. This is a plate from George Smith, the cabinet maker and upholsterer's guide. And this is a plate from Loudon, giving you another way of hanging a French bed. On the 22nd of June 1841, an advertisement appeared in the Sydney Gazette for a shipment of 351 maple French bedsteads, double, for sale from New York. The large size of this consignment suggests their popularity in colonial houses. While French beds was considered more elegant and certainly less prone to collect dust, there's very little evidence to indicate that we draped our beds, that is, Australians draped their beds, in this manner or certainly this manner. Part of that is that the posts were actually available through ironmongers, and so they were sold, not necessarily sold en suite with the bed. A slightly less upmarket version of a French bed is this slide from Wallach Brothers' Complete Design Book, sort of around the mid-1880s from the National Gallery of Victoria. They were a large manufacturer and offered modest bedroom furniture, dressing table, washstand, and note the little splash curtain here for when you were washing your face. This is another example of a French bed advertisement from Schulbred, and then a really wonderful image from the Justice and Police collection from the 1930s. What I actually expect with this bed is that I think here it might have once been it might have been a half tester, because you could actually buy the hoops separately and add them. So that's what I actually think in this instance, because this looks incomplete with no finials. So it's a really evocative image, an unknown photographer, an unknown interior. The final decades of the 1800s saw a rise in popularity of the Italian bed, distinguished by its short two arms draped with light curtains. Nothing is more desirable or fashionable than the simple hangings from the swinging Italian wings to ward off draughts. And this is from a collection of a small photo album from a house called Bangula in Mossman from 1912. And you can see here, having gone from a four-post to a half-tester, what we have now is an Italian bed with just two small arms. And in the end, we got rid of them altogether. In the 20th century, beds became simpler, and bed hangings and draperies were dispensed with. Wooden beds, either enamelled, waxed, became fashionable along with new forms of manufactured chrome and steel. Of this sleeping room, from the Building magazine of 1911, G.J. Perrott writes, "The room is not overly crowded, and the absence of meaningless and dust-collecting knickknacks with which so many ornament their bedroom is a particularly good point." Between the wars, the bed came en suite with a wardrobe and dressing table for the first time. The bedroom suite, as we know it, was born. This is an example of commercial art from a magazine or trade catalogue for a veneered bedroom suites. One imagines with the names for a New South Wales retailer. This is the number 2 Blaxland. There was the Park, the Caller, and not to be outdone, the Marrickville. Another quite simple interwar interior. This is a Sylvia Evans at Alwyn, a photograph taken by her husband, Alan Evans, where you can see the end of the bedroom suite, an ensuite dressing table, little chair and stool. And then a great bedroom suite designed by Thea Proctor from the Home magazine in 1927. Until the 1940s passion for chenille, the Marcella quilt was the most common and enduring type of bed cover found in our homes. They were slightly padded, usually white, pretty boring. Cotton covers were loom woven to resemble quilted covers common in southern France. Less popular than the Marcella, but also used in the colonies, were knitted and crocheted quilts, native animal skin rugs, and palampores. A palampore was a panel of fabric commonly used as a bed cover, originally made in India from cotton. It's a bit like backpackers going away to Bali and bringing back saris and throwing them over beds or couches or whatever today. They derive their name from the word paling-posh and were first used in England in the 1600s. With India a regular stopover on the major trade routes between Europe and the colony, they were popular in Australia to the mid-1800s. From the 1870s, the guides were advocating the eider-down quilt as the warmest, lightest and best, but consequently the most expensive, bed covering. And this slide is from Gungaleen, Mrs. Crace's bedroom, and you can see here a rather sumptuous feather-filled eider-down. Then came the chenille bedspread, inexpensive, easy to wash, printed with ballerinas, available in a range of fashions and colours, and advertised in popular women's magazines. Fur, which is a slightly sensitive subject, but if you're talking about the history of of domestic interiors. It really played quite a large role, particularly up to the 1920s. This is a slide for tiger skin fur rugs, knee rugs for beds and floors. Perhaps from the sublime to the ridiculous, this is a fake fur bedspread from Rose Seidler House. This is actually a reproduction bed cover that was made when Sydney Living Museums took over Rose Seidler in 1984, but based on an original that Rose herself had made to Harry Seidler's specifications that we have in our collection. And then Penelope Seidler herself photographed in her house. She and her late husband Harry won the Wilkinson Award in 1967 for the house they designed together. The original bedspread was Thai silk, but they replaced it in the 1970s with one of fur from South America. Lewis Morley was a mate to Sydney Living Museums and me, and this photograph was taken by Lisa Tomasetti of him back in 2002. Babette Hayes, the well-known magazine editor and interior designer, designed this bedroom as a set for a feature article they were doing in Woman's Day back in 1974. And after Lewis took the photographs for the editorial, he took on the bits and pieces. I'm conscious I need to wrap up, and I hope that I have gone some way in suggesting how architectural trends, or not, notions of taste, or not, fashion, comfort and personal idiosyncrasies affect the decisions owners and their designers and architects make when furnishing their bedrooms. As to my own modest reno at home, only time will tell. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Koichi Takada has brought a Japanese sensibility to Australian architecture, and he's going to be our next speaker. He studied and graduated from the City University of New York and also the Architectural Association in London. And as an associate director at PTW Architects in Sydney, he worked on award-winning luxury apartment designs as well as a range of architectural projects in Japan, China and the Middle East. In 2008, he established Koichi Takada Architects in Sydney, and he's working on a number of exciting landmark projects in Australia and overseas. He's won a number of international competitions in Australia and Japan, as well as architectural and interior design awards. And the practice's projects are very well recognised and have been extensively featured in design magazines around the world. Please, will you welcome Koichi Takada?
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. It's very interesting, architects giving a bedroom talk, because architects never sleep. I would like to start talking about the importance of context before I talk specifically about the bedrooms. Living in a city gives you advantage to a certain lifestyle, convenience. Less time you spend in traffic or commute, you have more time to enjoy your downtime at cafe, restaurant, or doing shopping, meeting friends or entertainment within a walking distance, all of which enables you to have a very efficient lifestyle. And of course, better the location it gets, the higher the price and the smaller the size of apartment. In many ways, we work and play a big part in a big and fast-moving economy in the city. And here I question the sort of efficient and fast lifestyle. Maybe we become too efficient in city living. We are constantly reminded of time, and such a pressure can be overwhelming sometimes and very stressful. So how can we strike the balance? My practice and my work is known for the expression of nature, or bringing the element of nature back into the city, creating a space of retreat, so-called slow space, a similar notion of slow food as opposed to fast food, a place you go to escape from a demanding urban lifestyle, an experience similar to the effect nature has uplifting your energy and recharging your mind, as you can see here. We promote good health, well-being, quality of living environment rather than quantity, mass production, and design sustainable architecture over a long period of time, and not being fashionable and timely, but promote timeless design. And the timelessness that's really fascinates me in designing architecture, and perhaps the main reason for this talk and subject of bedroom, as it is also a timeless subject of our floor space. Shrinking apartments. As an architect and interior designer, we face an issue of ever-shrinking size of apartments. This is due to a big commercial pressure, making apartments more affordable, but we are pushed to redefine the traditional sense of rooms in the apartment. So 20 years ago, two-bedroom apartment, a typical two-bedroom apartment was about 100 to 125 square meters. 10 years ago, two-bedroom apartments become 85 to 105 square meters. Today, we design two-bedroom apartment around 65 to 85 square meters. And this, of course, poses a question: how do we find a balance between the increasing commercial pressure and decreasing residential amenity? Context. While the size of apartment is getting smaller today, the introduction of commercial residential amenity gives you a sense of owning much wider context. And I would like to show a few examples of a mixed-use multi-residential project we are currently working on, which demonstrate a high standard of residential amenity. So this is Sky by Crown, North Sydney. As you can see, the project is here, soon to go under constructions. Our client's Crown International Holding is known for their investment in great varieties of residential amenity within their development, which perhaps gives you a sense of living in a resort. As you can see, we propose a very beautiful private roof terrace over the penthouses. And then the other side, you see the pool pretty much floating in the air. So you can imagine swimming, 25-meter pool in the middle of North Sydney, looking over the houses beneath you. And that's a pretty incredible sight. And we are very excited to build this and demonstrate what we do as an architect in Sydney. V by Crown, also with Crown Group, currently under construction. This project is located, believe it or not, in the middle of Parramatta town centre. Our idea was to create a sort of a five-star resort feel. This is the residential amenity in the podium, and gives you almost a sense of being in a resort in Bali or some in a beautiful island resort. So the idea of this is that while your apartment may be small, you can bring your friends, family, friends, guests to this sort of residential amenity, book in advance and entertain them in this residential amenity. So other amenities include the music room, theater room, for children, of course, PlayStation. Another project we won recently through Design Excellence competition in City of Sydney, very exciting building. We are about to submit DA. Will be launched early next year for sales. This building in Clarence Street also has a beautiful residential amenity on the rooftop. Normally you would propose penthouses on the top, but we thought that we open up a space for everyone and the shared excitement being in the sky and feel the presence of the nature in the middle of the city. East Village in Zetland with Pace, currently under construction. residential complex surrounding elevated park is built on top of shopping precinct. This hybrid of activity gives you not only the convenience, but the village-like feel. We propose, as you can see here, a tree-like structure, drawing inspiration from natural forest and creating a forest-like environment of combined residential and shopping amenity. We look to nature and we draw a lot of inspiration from nature. We try to learn element of nature, what inspires us to translate into architectural environment. And perhaps we are more interested in nature rather than the buildings, and it pretty shows in our project. So you can go shopping in a marketplace under the forest. You get the double light effect in shopping areas, which would be quite amazing. And in the residential entries, again, carry the theme of the forest. So when you come home, so sort of welcomes you in to the infinite image of trees, as you go through the residential lobby. Bedrooms, given the context of residential amenity in architecture, I would like to now discuss the example of bedroom design in our project. One of our project, pretty much this started a practice, currently under construction in One Central Park along Broadway. Architecture was designed by Jean Nouvel in Paris. Absolutely exciting working experience with Jean Nouvel. And as he can say, the wind, the color of the sky, the trees around the building is not only done to be the most beautiful, it's done to give advantage to the surrounding. It's a dialogue. And when I started this project, I was told by a developer that not to be scared of Jean Nouvel, because he's such a superstar architect. And I thought about the approach to this, and I look at this building, and it's almost look like an urban forest. It's like proposing apartments within the forest or the jungle. And we wanted to connect to that. We want to create a dialogue to the Jean Nouvel's architecture. As you can see, in the middle of the city, in the Broadway, there will be a high-rise residential, and there's numbers of stagings under constructions. There'll be a student accommodation and office building. But what's fascinating is that obviously within this concrete jungle, you can start to see the vertical forest appearing. And over time, this would grow, and all the creepers would grow and eventually cover the building in green. The other thing is, and what's noticeable here, what we call heliostat, where it reflects the sunlight into places that you normally don't get. So this is sort of a southern-facing aspect where you don't normally get the light. But the idea is that to bounce the solar into the common area and creates the ambience in the southern aspect of the development. Level 29, there is what we call Sky Garden is set on top of heliostat, currently under construction. So as you can see, you would see the landscape of the city to the south and to the Homebush, and it's quite a spectacular experience being on top. So that's our West Tower that recently completed. And we look at architecture sometimes as a landscape, and we want to create a connection to the lot of natural element. And even designing an interior space, we want to create not only the visual connection, but the direct connection using the natural warmth of materials, and so on and so forth. So we looked to, this was one of the schemes that we proposed called organic. So we went out to the national park or a park and look at the inspiration in nature, picking up drifting wood and texture of timbers and grains and so on, and we tried to translate that into the scheme, creating a connection back to Jean Nouvel's architecture. One of the features that we proposed, this was original rendering. As you can see here, there is a sliding screen in front of kitchen, which can slide over the bedrooms. It's quite a small apartment, it's about 70 square meters. And in this sort of location, probably investor's child, a daughter would share with a best friend. And then in a sharing situation, gradation of privacy, if I may call, if not sort of having complete privacy or public openness, we wanted to create in-between spaces. So as you can see, when you slide the screens, you have a sense of light coming in, the breeze going through, but sort of half private, half open. So maintain the sense of space. If you want the complete privacy, you have another solid sliding door that can shut, so you can create your privacy. So this gives you a multiple level of conditions within small apartments. This is the plan. So if you look at the bedroom, which is highlighted in red, second bedroom here. So if this is the one person living, you would obviously sleep here. Living, dining, kitchen, bathroom. You probably use this as a study. Whereas sharing situation, you would probably have a bedroom, master bedroom here, second bedroom with a media, and then share this sort of space here. So that's the kitchen that when screens open. So when your roommate make a mess, you just shut within a second, everything goes away. And at night, you backlit and it becomes a beautiful lantern feature. So you're adding the value to the kitchen and apartment and then the space surrounding. And then another trick that we made was that from the living room, we used the bedroom to open up a vista. So in other words, if this had been a door, your vista would have been that angle versus with the screen, your vista start to open up. So that's when it's all closed. So that's sort of half closed or closed completely. So you can create the condition the way you like it. Another things that we worked on is the bathroom is shared bathroom. In this sort of situation, because the second bed is quite tucked in, we try to borrow the natural light through bathroom corridors and also create the sense of spaciousness viewing from the second bedrooms, as you can see. So when that's open, when it's shut, this becomes part of the joinery element, so you don't see it as a bathroom door. But when it's open, of course, the light comes through bathroom and creates the sense of space, open space. Another one we worked on is what we call a dual key, two-key apartment. It's a quite interesting concept started by Fraser's and Property Group. So that's a bedroom. So it's actually a one-bedroom apartment. But as you can see, this can become a common area, and then you could have two keys. So if you own this apartment, you could rent your bedroom, and then this bedroom would pay your mortgage for the whole apartment. So it's quite a clever ideas. And so this is a bit like a hotel room, and obviously in a mixed-use development, you go down to get food, or you have entertainment underneath you, and you don't probably need to, time to cook. And then that becomes, if you like, more studio apartment. We have 2.4 meter kitchen versus 1.2 meter kitchen. This become a common area, shared laundry space to storage space. And this has been very popular. And this is also the way to bring the cost down for the rent and also create affordability in an apartment price. So it's quite spacious, still very quite spacious. This is used as a studio. You can actually use this as a dining, living setting, and then the balcony. And 2.4 meter kitchen, use of very organic materials. And so this is the second bed. So this is just like a luxury hotel, about 32 square meters. So that's 1.2 meter kitchen. You have a microwave oven. So it's pretty much does what service apartment would do in a normal situations. Now the studio, this is one of the examples that we took from a V by Crown project in Parramatta. Studio is becoming about 40, 45, 50 square meters, getting ever smaller. The bedroom start to suffer, of course, because you start losing the circulation space. But something about the human nature that still wants to create the cocoon effect. When you sleep, you want to be enclosed. You want to have the coziness. So we created that sort of a slide screen with a curtain, and just like the Joanna's, the traditional bed furniture. So in the modern interpretations, so you do see the screen, so you can slide open and close, creates right next to the bedroom, and also the bathroom sort of becomes a joinery feature. So you don't see it as a bathroom door, but becomes like a box within the space. So the kitchen is again become part of the living space or the bedroom. That's the living, dining. Private apartment in Bondi Beach, we recently complete. Our clients in Sweden ask us to transform old and closed apartment into more open and free-flowing layout. Connecting interior with beautiful context of Bondi Beach was our main design intentions. We draw many inspiration from natural palette of Bondi Beach. One of the apartment is used, so this is the one of the apartment. We also designed another apartment right next to it. Originally was one apartment. We separated back into two apartments. It's still a relatively small apartment, about 65 to 75 square meters. And one of the apartment is used as a holiday apartment for the clients. And this made us rethink that the master bedroom can become a focal point, just like in many of the designers' boutique hotels you see in the beautiful island settings. So the idea of this bedroom being a focal point, so this not obviously has a beautiful North Bondi view. We're trying to maximize by cutting there was a beam in the wall here, so we knocked the wall down, so open the space completely. Obviously, this gives them an opportunity to entertain with a TV or big screen TV. Being the living space, again, sliding the door gives you a much better vista. So that's the view from the bedroom. That's when it's closed. And the palette relates to the sound of Bondi, and it's a lime wash and quite beachy and lift up with a marble feature in a living space. So this is looking from the living room again. We subdivided the panel and then meticulously aligned with the floorboard. So when this is done, it was quite a pleasant space to be in when everything works together. And then when it's open, so that bedroom appears, and then this gives a connection back to the view or connection back to the living space. And again, previous apartment was quite closed off. So when I first walked in, it was very compressed and it was very dull, dark. Now we completely transform into open, bright space. So that's closed, open. And then also the bathroom, so you have a circulation going around the bathroom, again, trying to make small space more spacious, and then the use of mirror reflecting the view from the Bondi Beach. So that's looking back to the Bondi Beach. So in every angle, every room, you probably, you have a direct connection to the beach and the ambience of the changing ambience of the Bondi Beach, which is really spectacular. Inspiration. I often look to draw inspiration from traditional Japanese architecture. Japanese architecture teaches us that sometimes, rather than having expensive materials, a true sense of luxury can be very simple and refreshing. Having a good amount of daylight, playing with light and shadow, bringing in fresh breeze through natural ventilation, or introducing the sound of water in summer and framing the garden that changes throughout 4 seasons. It is about the life of the space and the living in harmony with the nature. So this is Katsura Imperial Villa, one of my favorite architecture, and one of the most important Japanese cultural treasure, built around 1620. So designed as a series of villas for the Japanese prince to view the moon. So this was built for the moon viewing purpose. The prince moved from one room to another following the movement of the moon. So it was very calculated. So this villa connects to the universe in some way, and it's quite a spectacular when you're in this space in the garden. Beautiful proportion and composition with minimum meticulous detailing influenced many great architects such as Bruno Taut, Le Corbusier, and Walter Gropius. So idea of this is that when you go inside, tatami size of 900 by 1.8 meters. So it's pretty much, when you lie down, that's a human scale, human lying down on there. So that you can lie down. So the idea of this is that you can open and close. It's a sliding paperized panels. You can reconfigure anywhere you like it. So during the day, it functions as a living space, dining. Big guest comes, you open right up, get more multifunctional purpose. At night, you close as many as you like. If you don't want to sleep with your brothers or sister, you can, choose the places that you want to sleep. And then, of course, at night, you can open the shoji screen and connects back to the moon or the view outside to the garden. And tatami mat in some way, so that's the smallest you can make, 3 tatamis. 4.5 is the tea ceremony. Sort of we use it as one of the smallest room that you can make in a house module. And then you go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10. So when in Japan, when you ask about the size of your house, you say, well, I have 10 tatami or 20 tatami, and then if you like, the sort of the class that you belong to in the societies. Absolutely beautiful connection back to the nature and what we call borrowed landscape. So there's actual mountain beyond, and then you create, if you like, artificial garden, becomes part of the nature, and then slowly connecting back to engawa, which is the veranda, and back into, if you like, your main bedroom space. Iyashi is the word that we use for healing. So it's the space of healing. Tawara Ryokan in Kyoto is a clever design, multiple use of space in ryokan. Ryokan is a hotel in Japanese. Gives us many clues in dealing with a small space, and also gives us a rich experience and a great sense of retreat. For over 300 years, Tawara Ryokan has been run by a generation of the same family. And obviously, I had the pleasure of staying here, and one of the most amazing experiences. And it's quite a amazing location in the middle of Kyoto. You go inside, you don't know where you are, and there's very small series of small rooms consisting of very small rooms. But once in it, it heals you in some way that you don't want to get out to the town. So that's how they welcome you. They scatter the water, and then they polish your shoes. Then they bow. They welcome you in knees on the floors, and it's such amazing hospitality. And as you go up into the space, you have the courtyard, which brings the rain, if you like, the nature back into the space. And so this is a typical, if you like, a room, or if you like, a bedroom. But during the day, transform into the dining space. So this is how they would serve you for breakfast or lunch or dinner. And after that, you would wait here, and then behind they would clean this up into storage, and then this be transformed into some other functions. As you can see, it's beautiful proportions. There's a neighbor right next to this room, so you have this screen to avoid cross-viewing, but you still get the sense of nature or the garden that nearby, and Sudare, which is a screen that shut the sun. Ikebana, so it's a living flower, and this changes every day. Again, it's about the life in the space and experience. And again, you see tatami. So the tatami is interesting because when you're in the space, you actually smell the mattress, the straw, and we change it every year. So it's very fresh. It's like a living, organic materials, and it's very calming. And it always gives you that human scale because composed of that human height. And then the bathroom always have a connection back to the garden, great sense of ventilations, and you feel this season constantly changing. And this is how they serve you in the breakfast. And of course, at night, they make a bed for you. And finally, it is fascinating that even after 300 years of existence and sense of enriching process, experiencing this Japanese traditional architectural space, what I've loved to call timeless and slow space, sustain the function and demand of changing lifetime over so many years. It is a space you wake up, eat, study, work, entertain, and sleep, all in one space. For me, this is perhaps an ultimate bedroom that can change its function and at the same time adapt to changes throughout the season, over time, but never the same. I hope that despite of facing commercial reality, we will continue our attempts to create more awareness of slow space with our project. And of course, the bedroom will always be heart of the slow space and always welcomes you in the end of the night. Thank you.
Two incredibly different presentations. I'm sure you've got lots of questions, and we're running just a little bit later than we had anticipated. I'm going to ask both our speakers if they wouldn't mind coming to the front of the room. We've got some microphones that we're going to pass around, and as the presentation tonight is being recorded, we'd really appreciate if you could find a microphone and speak into it with your questions. So, questions from the floor?
I have a question for Joanna. With your slides dating to the 1800s, I didn't see any wardrobes. Would they have folded their clothes in drawers?
No, they were wardrobes. So
I must have missed them.
Yeah, no, they were, certainly you had press. There were wardrobes, press, secretaire. It's gone from my head. Certainly there were wardrobes, there were campaign chests and chests of drawers as well.
Thank you.
And there's another word that's just escaped me, it'll come back to me in a minute.
This is a question for both of you. You both talked about how bedrooms now are becoming multifunction spaces. Do you think this is a good thing?
I think we're running out of choice. I think it's, to me, designing apartments these days has got huge commercial pressure. You have to deal with the sellable product. The bedroom's ever getting smaller. The way to deal with the bedroom is, of course, making it more multifunctional. But also, I think the use of Wi-Fi, internet, laptop on your need in the bedrooms or the TV, all these technologies are, available. So I think the use of bedroom is more, if you like, the boundary between the living of the bedroom is blurred, and then the more you incorporate the space of the bedroom back into the living space, it gives you a sense of, owning bigger space, while you're making it affordable. So I think it's an inevitable choice when we design bedrooms. Yeah.
And so I'll just speak from my personal experience. I think it is inevitable, and I don't need 4 car parks or a bedroom and I just don't think that it's necessary or a good thing. I think environmentally it's questionable. I just feel that you don't need to live in a space this big. You can actually live quite comfortably and adaptably, if that's a word, in a space in that way. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we are running out of choice.
I found both your presentations so opposite in a way. It's more or less age specific. Like, I think Koichi's designs appeal more to the younger people. Am I correct? And the more sort of conservative furnishings appeal more to the older generation. Is this changing, or who are buying? Who's your target audience for your developments?
Certainly younger generations, and but I think the choice you have. I think empty nesters obviously move back to city. That's another phenomena. Likelihood is living in a penthouse, in which case you have more rooms. If you live in a smaller 2-bed, 1-bed studio type apartment, then choices are quite limited, whether for decoration purpose or having that sort of a bed furniture type, element in your space and so on. But I don't discriminate whether it's for young people or old people. I like to propose something that's, if you like, the white canvas, in which I was observing Joanna's slideshow. It's actually quite colourful. Mine is quite neutral, but it's almost like my slide is before the painting is done. So it's up to people to put colours or decoration, and I'm not a decorator. I provide the space, and more of my interest is more health or well-being conscious design. So let the light in, whether it's for the young people. I want people to live in a very healthy environment, and that's most important to us. Yeah.
I think Zen. We were asked quite particularly tonight to talk about sort of different. So I think that I've, in some small way, covered an historical outline. Anecdotally, I think I spoke to a woman yesterday who was trying to give away to anyone a free home, a 12-piece dining room suite that her kids, she might have been in her mid-60s, her children were living in flats in Potts Point, in Pyrmont. She said, we're downsizing to a penthouse in Potts Point. What are we going to do with it? And I think if you trawl around any auction house on Saturday, I think it's cyclical, but I think that, whereas you might have had to pay $8,000 to $10,000 for a dining room suite 15 years ago, I'm not an auctioneer, but you might pick something up much more cheaply now, and I think it's cyclical. I think I didn't use it tonight because it didn't really fit in, but we had a council throwout in the area where I live 4 weeks ago, and there was a mountain of cheap chipboard, like just disposable furniture that was all going to landfill, that was as big as a small house on the footpath near a development that was built maybe 15 years ago. It was a disgrace. There was no point in even trawling through it to try and recycle something or scavenge something for home. It was all rubbish, all going to landfill. So I think that thing about quality, buy one thing that will last you forever, or pick up something for the street that's had a life, that's still got life left in it. I think it's getting slightly off the track, but I think that buying well and buying as well as you can within the boundaries of your constraints. But I think that, I think it's cyclical. Armoire was the word I was thinking of. Just come back.
Excellent. I just have a quick question about the traditional multifunctional use of space in the Japanese. I can't say it properly. Ryokan is ryokan. As to, you said that in the evenings the furniture used for dining would be removed and provided for the space where you would then sleep. Who traditionally did that removal? Was that part? Was it a delegated household task?
Interesting question.
Because it assumes, I suppose, that one has the time to do that. It's a fantastic use of the space for many, many functions, which I think would be superb in this ever-shrinking, but it does assume that one has the time, and I wonder traditionally who did it in the Japanese society.
I think in my family we all did it. I think you have to be absolutely disciplined, and then that's the part of cultural aspect of Japanese house, if you like. In the morning you wake up, you have to clean your mattress and fold and put it back to storage space, and then of course then mother would bring the tables and so on and so forth, and do breakfast and if you have a guest, then that becomes bigger. You open up the screens and so on and so forth. So, it establishes a communication within the family. So you're not segregated by the walls or some architectural device. And I find it quite fascinating. And what's more fascinating, actually, even if you close the screen, because it's just the paper that separates in between your room to other room. So essentially, you hear everything. And that's to me was quite an amazing experience. And so you're never alone. It's even if you subdivide it, it's still one big space. You have the sense of the unity. And then when morning comes and then everything brokens up, and then, like you mentioned, whether myself or mother or sisters, does what needs to do for days to come. And again, when the night comes, you clean up, and it's it's a tiring process, but I think that's how you learn tradition and inherit tradition in some way, and the architect that does that, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So.
I think we have time for just one more.
This is a question for Mr. Takada. I just wonder, when you are designing, if there are any rules or principles you will adhere to, when you are compressing the space. I know, you mentioned, the apartment getting ever smaller, and you can cut down space of the kitchen or the living room, the bedroom. The bathroom becomes shared bathroom. So, is there any rule that that it definitely can't cut down anymore? You have to adhere. Is there some components you have to keep that cannot be compressed? Otherwise, people will not feel comfortable living there.
Yeah, I think we spend enormous amount of time debating that, really. And recently debated with Iwan Sanito, the CEO of Crown Group. He's an architect himself. And it becomes quite tricky because he understands dimension. So we keep cutting dimension. At some point he said, well, that's too small. So who gives away? Would he pay more? Or, in which case then I can make bigger room? Or, so there's a tension. But I think the fundamental thing is that, to me, bedroom has to work as a bedroom in the end of the day. Kitchen has to work as a kitchen. And there's a certain specific function that as an architect need to provide. And that's, in the end of the day, it's a common sense. Understanding, yes, we have to use other devices like screens or curtains or, bifold screens and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think the proportion, as I show in the tatami rooms, 4.5 tatami, is about just less than 3 and 2.7 meters. And that's, I think, is the golden proportion for me. Because I grew up and I understand how the space works, and I know you can do a lot within this space. But if you start to compressing further, that's when I would be very careful, or invent some new device.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to finish there, but I'd like you to join me in thanking both our speakers again tonight for an amazing presentation. If you've enjoyed tonight's talks, don't forget that limited tickets are still available for the remaining Rooms in the House talks, including, of course, my talk on Veranda next week. And for further information about any of the upcoming talks in Rooms of the House, have a look at our website, Sydney Living Museums, or pick up the brochure at the bar on the way out. And finally, for those of you who might want to linger, you might have noticed on the way in that we are hosting a new champagne pop-up bar in what used to be the vault of the Sydney Mint, called the Bullion Bar, and they're open till 9 p.m, so you could drop in there for a glass of champagne on the way home. And the Bullion Bar will be operating right through until the week before Christmas, Wednesday to Friday, 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. every night. So if you're in the city and you'd like to check it out, please drop in. Thank you very much.